It's news time on Freedom. In the studio, Mikhail Baranov. Hello. Pavlograd in the Dnipropetrovsk region has just endured the most massive Russian attack yet. According to the regional military administration, on Saturday night the occupiers struck the city with missiles and drones. A fire station, educational institutions, industrial enterprises, and 9 apartment buildings were damaged. Fires broke out. There have been no reports of casualties. 2 people were killed as a result of shelling in the Sinelnikov district of the Dnipropetrovsk region. Russian occupiers struck the Vasilkivska community with missiles. Infrastructure was damaged, including a medical clinic and private homes. The aggressor attacked the Nikopol district with artillery and also used drones. The Sumy region also came under fire. The main target of the Russian occupiers' strike was Shostka. At night, for 4 hours, the Russians attacked the city with strike drones, and in the morning they dropped 6 guided bombs. A large fire broke out, an infrastructure facility was destroyed, and residential buildings were damaged. An emergency rescue team is working at the scene. According to preliminary information, there are no dead or injured. A 65-year-old displaced woman from Lysychansk was killed as a result of the Russian attack on Odessa on the night of July 19th. 6 more people, including a child, were injured. The Russians attacked the city with 24 strike drones. One of the drones hit a residential high-rise in a sleeping district. A large fire broke out there. The fire engulfed apartments from the 6th to the 9th floor. More details about the aftermath of the Odessa shelling in our report.
Vera mourns her mother, who was killed in the apartment destroyed by a Russian drone. In 2023, her family moved to Odessa from Lysychansk. Here, they rented 2 apartments. Vera lived in one with her husband and 3 children, and her mother lived next door. At the time of the attack, the 65-year-old woman was trapped inside her apartment. Vera even heard her mother calling for help, but because of the intense fire, she couldn't do anything. Rescuers recovered the body of the woman, who had already died. Preliminary reports say she suffocated from carbon monoxide.
It hit the neighboring apartment. There were 2 apartments, and it landed right in the center of the apartment. So basically, the 2 apartments ended up becoming one. And with that blast wave, everything collapsed on top of the grandmother. Grandma, well, when we were running out, she was still alive. We tried to help. The grandson tried to help too, to lift it, but then there were more explosions, one after another, and naturally, everyone kept sliding down.
A Russian drone hit the building around the 8th floor. The fire engulfed apartments from the 6th to the 9th floor. At that moment, Alexei was at home and managed to hide in the bathroom. His apartment was completely burned out. The guy had bought it not so long ago and had only lived there for a year.
I was in the bathroom. I heard the first hit. You know, when they fly close by here, I usually go to the bathroom. This time I made it. I wasn't asleep. I was the oldest. After work I went to the bathroom. So, literally with the 2nd or 3rd shahid, I heard the explosion, the shrapnel. The bathroom door was blown off. The latch popped open. So, one door. I'm looking. There's glass here. Something's burning over there. I go out. Someone's shouting. And I wasn't dressed at all. I barely managed to put on some shorts and got out of there.
Alla's apartment is on the 7th floor. After the night attack, it's impossible to live there. Everything is covered in debris. The blast wave tore out the window frame. The entrance to the kitchen is blocked.
I don't go out often, but today, or rather, last night, right after I first heard the buzzing of the shahid, I decided to leave. And in a split second, I got stuck in the doorway and couldn't fasten my robe. And just as I went in, closed this door, there was this explosion, and I always have my bag in my hand. I ran out because there was the smell of burning, of smoke. People here were covered in blood. I was lucky I didn't even get a scratch because, thank God, I felt it and left at the right moment. Well, everything else. It's war. We'll manage. We're strong. Everything will be all right.
The apartments below the 6th floor were flooded with water as a result of putting out the fire. The entire building is without power and cut off from water and gas supply. However, city officials expect that by the end of the day, utilities will be restored and people will be able to return to the surviving apartments.
Yesterday, our building was hit. My wife and I were in the storage room, not in the shelter. It felt really unpleasant. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And as for those who send this crap our way, let them get soaked. That's about it. Yeah, and don't ignore the air raid alerts. If anything happens, go to the shelters, don't risk your life. Because, well, we survived by a miracle. As believers, my wife prayed, and God protected us. So it's a really nasty experience, but the consequences are broken windows.
At least 4 apartments in this building are completely destroyed. Specialists are continuing to inspect the building to determine whether there is any risk of the structural elements collapsing. Ksenia Sitynskaya from Odessa for Freedom TV channel.
In total, on Saturday night, Russia launched 344 drones and 35 missiles at Ukraine. Air Defense Forces neutralized 185 drones and 23 missiles. In addition, 7 cruise missiles and 129 decoy drones did not reach their targets or were lost from radar. The air attack was repelled by aviation, anti-aircraft missile troops, electronic warfare, and drone units, as well as mobile fire groups of the Ukrainian Defense Forces. Fighting on the front line does not subside. The most active offensive actions by the Russians are taking place near Pokrovsk. Over the past day, the Ukrainian armed forces repelled 47 attacks there. The situation is also difficult on the Lyman section of the front, where Russian troops unsuccessfully stormed the positions of the Ukrainian Defense Forces 26 times. In the Kramatorsk area, the Russian army attacked 8 times, and another 7 times near Toretsk. In total, there were 177 combat clashes over the past day, according to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Ukrainian defenders continue to inflict significant losses on the Russian occupation forces and undermine their offensive potential in the rear.
As for the Kharkiv direction, we're talking about the enemy's attempt to attack more intensively in the Vovchansk area. The situation here also remains quite tense. The Defense Forces Command is making decisions that are meant to prevent the Russians from advancing further. It's clear that the so-called Lyman-Kupiansk axis remains very difficult. The Russians are trying, in particular, to expand their bridgehead on the right bank of the Oskil River, which they have established there. In order to strengthen it, they are trying to move in heavy equipment. At the same time, the crossings that the enemy is building across the Oskil are being destroyed by the defense forces.
Another 1,120 Russian soldiers were eliminated by Ukraine's defense forces over the past day. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Ukrainian defenders also destroyed 7 armored combat vehicles, 46 artillery systems, 1 multiple launch rocket system, and 112 units of automotive equipment. In total, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the Russian army has lost 1,040,950 soldiers. You can now see all the latest figures on Russian occupier losses on your screens. Australia has delivered Abrams tanks to Ukraine as part of a $160 million aid package. According to Defense Minister Richard Marles, Kiev has already received most of the 49 tanks. The rest will be delivered in the coming months. I should note that Australia is one of Ukraine's largest partner countries outside of NATO, providing support since the very beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion. The U.S. House of Representatives has approved the extension of military aid to Ukraine. The corresponding bill received majority support, 353 votes in favor. Next, the document must be considered by the Senate, and if approved, it will be sent to the White House for signing. The bill provides for funding of the American defense sector as a whole at approximately $832 billion for the next year, including, among other things, foreign programs. Ukraine is working to ensure that other countries outside the Union also join the European sanctions. This was reported by Volodymyr Zelensky following a meeting with the head of Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The president emphasized that he and Andriy Sybiha also discussed agreements with the United States. The momentum is good, and Kiev is counting on strengthening cooperation with Washington. In turn, the Minister of Foreign Affairs reported to Zelensky on the situation in relations between Russia and Georgia regarding Ukrainian citizens, noting that Moscow is using the deportation of Ukrainians as a weapon.
Since June, Russia has significantly increased the number of deported Ukrainian citizens, mostly former convicts, to the border with Georgia. As a result, dozens of people, many of whom lack the necessary documents, are stuck in the transit zone. Ukrainian consuls are actively working on processing documents and transferring them to Ukraine via Moldova. To avoid further complications, we are publicly proposing that Russia send these categories of Ukrainian citizens directly to the border with Ukraine. We will be ready to receive them there. There are appropriate sections of the border where this is possible. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, on social network X.
Ukraine has returned 11 children from the temporarily occupied territories and from Russia as part of President Volodymyr Zelensky's initiative Bring Kids Back UA. The children are between 10 and 17 years old. This was reported by the head of the president's office, Andriy Yermak. He thanked Qatar for its mediation, as well as the team from the Ukrainian Ombudsman's office for their coordinated and principled work.
The story that struck me the most was that of a family to whom we returned 5 biological brothers and sisters. The children were taken to Russia, and for a long time there was no information about them. Only after some time did they themselves manage to contact their adult sister in Ukraine and ask, "Take us home." And even after that, the journey back was very difficult. The Russian guardianship authorities exerted pressure, dragged out the process, and tried to force them to change their minds. The return only became possible after more than a year of persistent and painstaking work. This story is yet another reminder. Ukraine does not stop until its children come home. Andriy Yermak, head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
And now we return to the Russian shelling of Ukrainian territories. On Saturday night, Russia launched yet another combined attack on Ukraine. 11 regions came under fire. President Volodymyr Zelensky called on partners to swiftly implement all agreements that will help save the lives of peaceful Ukrainians.
I thank all the leaders who understand how important it is to promptly carry out our agreements. Joint weapons production, investments in drone manufacturing in Ukraine, specifically drones, interceptors, the provision of air defense systems and missiles for them, as well as the possibility of producing them here in Ukraine. All of this saves lives and is needed by Ukraine right now. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
If Russia wants to fight, it won't stop, said Mikhailo Podolyak, advisor to the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, on the Freedom TV channel. He emphasized that without coercion, Russia will not cease fire. Podolyak believes that the 50 days given to the Kremlin are an attempt by Trump to appeal to leaders who have influence over Putin.
They will gladly use these additional 50 days as an opportunity to intensify drone and missile strikes on the civilian population as much as possible. You see that, right? In other words, this is now the main component of how the war is being waged, because they obviously have no significant advances along the front line, nor can they have any. Well, there are extremely heavy battles going on there, but still, right? And so, in order to create this sense of a massive escalation of the war, of its scale, they strike at the civilian population. These 50 days, in my opinion, are still an attempt by Trump to appeal to countries that undoubtedly have a different kind of influence over Russia. Russia depends on them for resources. It depends on them financially. In other words, it sells its main resources there. That's China, first and foremost China.